Hi, I'm Jim Knotts, President and CEO of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund. Welcome to today's virtual reading of the names. 2022 marks the 40th anniversary of the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. As part of our commemoration, we'll host an in-person reading of the names at the wall from November 7th through 10th, 2022, when all 58,281 names on the wall will be read aloud. In the lead up to that event, we'll be reading names each day online while sharing the photos of these heroes. For our daily virtual reading, the names of the service members will be read by month and day of death between the years 1956 and 1975 in alphabetical order for the given day. We apologize in advance for any mispronunciations. Know that our readers are doing their best to honor these service members. We hope you'll listen and watch each day and share with others as we remember and honor those who gave their lives during the Vietnam War.
Michael Edward Alderson, Michael George Allendorf, William Albert Andrews, Mike Armendariz, Lauren Aaron Armlin, David Bruce Arnold, Philip Ray Bailey, Willie James Baker, Edward Harding Ballard, Melvin Ballard, William Howard Barksdale, Donnie Stephen Bartlett, Darrell Charles Bauer, Donald Wayne Bean, John Lee Bendor, Donald Lee Bennett, Arthur Thomas Beimerit, Edmund David Bilbrey, Clarence Finley Blanton, Jess Burton Boycourt Jr., Ronald Dale Bond, Kenneth Lee Boykin, Perry Leonard Bozeman, Wayne Allen Bratz, Herman Frank Brown, William Henry Brown, Benny Charles Burns, James Henry Calfee, John V. Clanahan, Porter Earl Calloway, Dennis Arnold Calton, Joseph Carlos Carvajal, Frank Lee Cass, Harry Lee Cernell, Harvey Robert Ja Chambers, John Michael Chappie, Jean Roger Clemencia Jr., James Wilford Clement, Roger Leroy Kaufman, Gary Martin Cohen, William Alvin Comley, Francis Brant Concannon, Edward Thomas Cooper, John R. Cowan, Robert Dennis Davis, James Woodrow Davis, Martin James DeHeimer, Dennis John DeMichael, James Dalla Deacon, George Allen Demby, Roger Edward Denny, Michael Digino, Milford Harold Dingman, Willie Dowling Jr., David Allen Downing, Samuel Alexander Dumas, Henry Albert Dye Jr., David Everett Easton, Vanderbilt Elliott Jr., Harvey Leroy Engel, Frank Carl Esposito, Richard Loy Etchberger, Joe Franklin Evans, Thomas Alton Ferguson,
Whitney T. Ferguson III, William James Flood Jr., Jimmy Flores, Keith Michael Flumer, James Edward Fowler, Donald Leon Fowler, Kenneth Michael Frayne, James Edward Francis, Gary Wayne Friedman, Roy Edward Gardner, Jose Garza Jr., Dana Leon Gerald, Donald Stanley Gilman, Henry Gerald Gish, Dennis Frederick Grace, Calvin Curl Gracer Jr., Benny Joe Graham, Michael Jerome Grunwald, Guy Paul Guadagno, Oscar G. Gutierrez, Melvin Guyton, Richard Harold Haig Jr., Willis Roselle Hall, Terrell Thomas Ham, Donald Ralph Hamrick, Stephen Harder, Louis Craig Harris, Sammy Lowell Hartzell, Rodney Glenn Helzel, Josef Refugio Hermosillo, Richard Brown Height, Ralph Dean Hirschler Jr., Frederick Alton Hitson, Larry L. Hobbs, Larry Leon Hodges, Forrest Dean Haim, Samuel Lloyd Holder, Melvin Arnold Holland, James Michael Holsworth, Philip Bruce Holtzclaw, James Harrison Horton, William Spraggins Hunt, James Edward Hutton, Archie Hubert Ewa Jr., Larry Anthony Jackson, John Richard Jackson, James Toshi Kajiwara, Joseph John Cairns Jr., David George Kearney, James Michael Kendrick, Philip John Kimple, Herbert Arthur Kirk, Eldon John Kirkpatrick Jr., Paul Francis Klug, David William Kmetz, Walter Allen Kohler, John Robert Kreidler, Gary Ray Large, Elmer Dale Lauk, Roger Dale Legg, Vincent Jean Liu, Joseph Anthony Lewis, John Thomas Lockhart, Raymond Lopez,
Ario Joseph Lucci Jr., Michael John Luce, John Walter Luttrell, Ronald Lee Manley, Freddie Marshall Jr., Gene D. Martin, David Linwood Mathis, William Carroll Mattis, Norman Robert Mayer, Alan Bruce McCutcheon, Thomas Lee McGee, Richard Nash McInerney, Robert Charles McKenna, Daniel Lloyd Meisenberg, Doyce Jean Miller, Neil E. Monet, Jerry Marcus Moody, Walter Lee Moore, James Pierpont Morgan, John Frederick Morris, Dennis Lee Moyer, Douglas Mundhank, John Darrell Noakes, Ronald Robert Northrop, Chester Keith Nuesi, James Leo Nuffer, Stephen Boyd Oakes, George Herman Oler, Ernest Arthur Olds, Olaf Thomas Olson, Dean Russell Orne, Fred Walter Pack, Jeffrey Lloyd Peck, Bradley Eugene Peterson, John Robert Piner, Gary Anthony Plum, Thomas Poldino, David Stanley Price, Peter Louis Procopio, Dennis Dale Reed, James William Reese, Doyle Wells Reeves, Robin Williams Richardson, Edward Ritzick, Kenneth James Robinson, Tommy Lee Robinson, Raymond Gonzalez Roca, Albert Eduardo Rodriguez, Charles David Rogers, Clarence Leon Rouse, Richard A. Rowell, James Lowell Russell, Lester Paul Saba, Richard Barry Sams, Benny Cumyama Sanchez, Jose Luis Santo Lopez, Robert Ned Sauls, Richard Martin Schmidt, Robert Ernest Chopal, Randolph Scott, Patrick Lee Shannon, Roland Jr. Shaw, John Edward Shiraka, Dale Edward Shirley,
Paul Wayne Shrewsbury, Richard Dean Smith, David Hugh Smith, George Julius Smith, Jr., Floyd Tyrone Spencer, Hayward Carl Spencer, Donald Ken Springsteda, Terry Michael Steiner, Larry Lee Stoner, Larry Strahan, Michael Nelson Sullivan, Carls Leroy Tart, Tony LaRue Tate, Louis Wayne Terrell, David Charles Teutsch, Terrence Pierce Thomas, Howard Ray Thomas, Jr., Daniel Wayne Tyndall, Dennis Aaron Toadvine, Andrew Trapani, Jeffrey Arthur Turner, Gail Kirk Vogler, Robert Carl Volz, James Milton War, Howard Gregory Webster, John Randolph Weir, Julio Cesar Weld, Gerald Franchi Wernsdorfer, Willie Amos Williams, Henry Braxton Williams, Jr., Larry Gale Williamson, Harrison Wine, Jr., Richard Stephen Wood, Don Franklin Worley, Jack Bernard Young,